What's up everybody, Maran here for another quick drive video. So this time I'm in the 2020 Mercedes A220 4MATIC. This is the all-wheel drive version, and it's really impressive. This is my first time actually getting to experience the A-Class interior on a drive here, and it is really cool. I love, you have these smaller screens than what you get normally in other, larger Mercedes products, but I really love they're just so glossy and high resolution. The graphics are fantastic, and it's all, I love that it's gone to a touchscreen. Now you still do have a touchpad if you want, but having the ability to go through and just messing with everything just with your touch, I think is a lot better in my opinion. And so this vehicle is just so loaded with tech. Now the A-Class starts in the mid 30,000 range, but then this one loaded up the way it is probably around 50 or so. And I mean, you get a lot of cool stuff for that money. You have this very sweet heads-up display, which is one of the nicest looking heads-up displays in any vehicle. It's right in line with all of the other nice new Mercedes heads-up displays, which are some of the best in the business currently. And I mean, but everything is so nice in here. The only thing I will say is, Mercedes used to have in all their models metal window switches, and this one's gone to plastic. I get that we're in the cheapest Mercedes, so that's okay, because you have the metal bezels around the air vents. The air vents all have a heavy, weighty feel to them. That's the kind of stuff you usually don't even get in a lot of more expensive vehicles. So this definitely feels every bit of that $50,000 price tag, even at that price tag. Now if you were to go for a lower one, you can get smaller screens and make it feel a little cheaper in here, but even still, it's a pretty nice place to be. Honestly, I think it's probably the nicest interior in its class, hands down, and Mercedes is usually given that title, at least in my opinion. They often do some of the nicest stuff for their class, and so totally have that same situation here with this one. But so one thing, now I'm turning onto a back road here, and I'm just in the normal comfort mode, so it's a little more relaxed, but I will say that this 7-speed dual clutch automatic is improved. So previously, in the CLAs, I reviewed a CLA 45 several years ago, and that older version of the dual clutch auto that they use in their smaller cars wasn't smooth from a stop, and was a little jerky at times, and this seems to be nicely smoothed out, at least here in comfort mode. Whenever I was starting from a stop earlier, it was seamless. I didn't feel any clutch engaging or anything, and I'll continue to watch for that as I drive here, but it seems to be a lot smoother, which is good, because that was honestly, it was so unsmooth in the old CLAs that it was almost a deal breaker in my opinion. But I think this is nicely improved. As far as powertrain goes here, it runs a 2-liter turbo engine, but it has less power than the usual Mercedes turbo 4-cylinders. So this only does 188 horsepower, 221 pound-feet of torque. And because of that, 0 to 60 time for these is around 7.1 seconds. And so it's not going to be super fast, but someone buying an A-Class here, they're buying something for the luxury of it. They want to have, they don't mind the small dimensions, but they want to have the luxury, and I don't think power is a top priority for someone buying one of these. If you do want to have good power, you can go up. They're going to have an A35 and an A45, and the 35 alone does over 300 horsepower, and if you're an enthusiast, that's the one to wait for. 7.1 seconds for 0 to 60 time is still above average, considering most of these people driving crossovers these days are doing 8 seconds 0 to 60s at best in a lot of these vehicles. So still, it's going to feel peppy enough. And of course, if you put it into the dynamic modes here, there's eco, comfort, sport, and an individual here in the A220. So we're going around some tighter corners here in sport mode. And this one does have the AMG line package, so it's a little firmer with its suspension setup all the time, as opposed to a normal A-Class would be. But this kind of wakes up the engine. This is where it feels a little more responsive now, and it almost has like a Subaru rumble to it here from this engine. It actually sounds really good. I like that. Wasn't expecting to enjoy the sound of this vehicle or have any sound at all, and so the fact that it sounds like a WRX or something is actually a nice surprise, so that's cool. Other stuff though, steering is wonderfully, and now it's a little heavier here in sport mode, but very sharp and pretty precise. Isn't a ton of feel through it, but pretty average for a Mercedes, and actually I think a little more feel than what you even give with some of the other Mercedes products. I think a C-Class actually might have a little less feel than this does, so it feels really nice. And having the all-wheel drive is good. Otherwise you would have front-wheel drive here with the A-Class. It's a front-wheel drive based platform, and It actually drives very nicely though, so even with the AMG line suspension, we were going over a couple of bumps earlier, and still very comfortable, and still has that nice layer of luxury. It's got sound insulation, so it's not too windy. I think the previous the old CLAs had a little more wind noise, weren't as refined. This, it's really quiet. You don't hear any wind noise outside. You don't really hear any tire noise. And in the mid-range there, it actually still feels pretty punchy. You're not going to be wanting for power or anything. Even if you're an enthusiast, you're probably not going to get annoyed with this amount of power. It's plenty for normal roads with normal speed limits and stuff. Feels really good. So unfortunately, I only have about 20 minutes in this vehicle, so I can't do an in-depth assessment on how the stereo sounds or the infotainment, how that works. But it's very similar in its setup to like the GLE that I reviewed already. And so if you want to hear in-depth thoughts on this new Mercedes touchscreen display and all that kind of stuff, you can go watch that video. But I mean, in this small package at this fairly affordable price, this is a great entry point into the Mercedes brand for a lot of people. And even if you're an enthusiast and you just want a little fun daily driver to run around in, you don't need 300 horsepower with the faster version, then this is still going to be really a fun little car to zip around in, and it's just so luxurious. The only thing I will say is that these seats are a little bit on the firm side, especially for the seat back. The seat bottom's not bad, but the seat back is a little firmer than I would like it to be. So that's the only thing that's striking me as not super luxurious. And I think there are a couple seat options you could get. I think these are like the standard seats. I don't think they're AMG seats or anything, but that's the only thing. So definitely sit in one of these and take it for a test drive. If it feels comfortable enough to you, then go for it. But that's the only thing. The more that I drive this, the more I'm like, wow, like everything is so luxurious except the seat back is just a little firm. But I'm truly nitpicking. That's the only thing that I am finding that I don't like so far. But we do have these nice metal paddle shifters. So let's try out the manual shifting here in sport mode and see how that does. It's very quick, very responsive. Yeah, I mean, it's a dual clutch, so it shifts itself pretty quickly. Now the tach is jumping a little faster than the sound is, so I think the tach makes you think it's shifting a little faster than it is. Yeah, it's not the fastest. I'm sure they're saving the faster shift speeds for the AMG versions. Totally understandable. But we'll go ahead and take it out of that manual mode here, and let's do an acceleration and see how that does in sport mode. Here we go. Okay. Good little turbo whistle going on there. I like that. Good amount of power. Underwhelming, it's not going to make me giggle like a maniac or anything, but it's sufficient power to merge and stuff like that. But yeah, I think, considering the A-classes, the A35 is going to have 300 horsepower roughly, and you're going to have better sounds and, crackles and pops and stuff. You don't get any of that here in the standard A-class, of course. I, as an enthusiast, would still wait and pay the extra for the A35 most likely. But if that's not a priority of yours, this is fantastic, and I am fully expecting these things to sell like hotcakes because this is just, it's so much car. And I mean, yeah, it's small dimensions, but it's not too bad. The back seat doesn't seem to be super cramped or anything. I think it's totally usable, and because this is the standard A-class, you have an actual usable rear seat with actual headroom because you don't have a sloping roofline like you get in the CLA, which is going to be available. You can still get a CLA. They're doing a new version of that too, but personally, I'd probably go for the A-Class. You actually have a more usable back seat, and it's also a little cheaper than the CLA is. But one last little thing here, we got a roundabout coming up, and we can see how it handles that. That's a nice tight corner here, and it's pretty flat. There's a little bit of lean built into it, not a ton of grip. So that's something that could be improved, of course, but again, these are all things that the AMG model always addresses, so they leave that space intentionally. I think one thing you're feeling in those corners and that roundabout in particular is the weight here too. So these weigh about 3,400 pounds. I think it's like 3,417 to be exact here, and so for a small car, that's a pretty weighty vehicle, and obviously it's a Mercedes and it's loaded with tech, so that explains it. But just something to keep in mind, compared to some other vehicles that might be, in this size category at least, that are much lighter. Your Civics and things like that are going to be 400 pounds lighter, and they feel 400 pounds lighter in corners compared compared to this. But if you're, you know, just obviously wanting the luxury, then you're not going to mind that weight, and it gives it a very substantial and solid feel going down the road too. But really a nice setup. I'm impressed. This thing is really nice and smooth. So anyway, huge thanks to Mercedes for bringing this vehicle out here to the WAPA Rally. Let me know your thoughts on the A-Class in the comments below. Thank you guys very much for watching. I'll see you on the next one. Take care.